Hi, this is Scott with ClaySys. What we'll be looking at today is how to add rules, in other words, the business logic that you need to your custom ClaySys AppForms solutions. There's a number of entry points for starting to create rules. We'll take a look at some of those today. Here on the left-hand side, there is a rules panel. That's one option for starting your rule creation. At the top here is a rule tab. You can create rules here, but this is also a designer and gives you a graphical representation of your rules. We'll take a look at that. On the right in the properties pane, there is a rules option for each control that you have selected. And then finally, once you're comfortable with building the actual rule syntax for constructing a rule, you can go right to the designer here again at the top and start manually entering your rules and creating them that way if you prefer. So multiple different ways to go about creating rules. We'll take a look at most of those today. Before we begin, let's take a look at the form that I've got created for our demonstration. It's very simple, just a couple of controls. This box up here is a drop-down box called CBX Choices. I've hard-coded some values in there, just 4 different versions of Windows. The goal of the rule that we'll be doing for this demonstration is to set a value into this TXT result text box once we've made a choice from this drop-down box. Obviously not a very complex rule, but the main goal of this video today is to get you comfortable with the different entry points for creating rules, to get you comfortable with using the expression builder so you can start to learn the logic and syntax that you need for creating those rules, and then to be able to implement those into your own ClaySys AppForms solutions. Okay, so let's get started. So the first option that we'll look at today for creating a new rule is using the rules panel here on the left-hand side of our screen. When I select that option, we'll switch from the toolbox to the rules panel. And you can see this is divided into a couple of different sections. The top section for the moment just contains the button to start the process, create new rule. The bottom section, this contains the parts of the rule that we have to build. There are the triggers, in other words, what causes this rule to execute. There are the actions, what does the rule do once it actually is executed. And then finally there are decisions. You may want to think of this as a condition. Is there a condition that has to be met before those actions are carried out once the rule is executed? So we'll take a look at all of those. Let's start back at the top though, create new rule. It's important to realize that when you click the create new rule button, it will create a new rule for you that is tied to whatever control that you currently have selected in your form designer. So as you can see at the moment, I have my text box TXT result selected. If I were to click create new rule now, I'll get a new rule that is tied to that control, and that's not what I want. Remember, for this demonstration, the goal is to set a value into this TXT result field once a selection is made from this drop-down box. So for that, I want the rule to be on my drop-down box. So I'll select that control now, and then go ahead and click create new rule. Now, the first thing you need to know is that whenever you create a new rule in the AppForms designer, it will have a name of simply new rule. So you're going to want to change that to be something more meaningful in your solution. So to do that, you click the edit button, the text becomes highlighted, we're available, and now you can provide a more meaningful name. All right, once that's done, let's continue down. You'll see the triggers. This gets automatically set for you. With a drop-down box, the trigger for a drop-down box is on selection change. That simply means every time you change the value in your drop-down box, this rule is going to fire. It's that simple. Now, actions. Remember, the goal here today is when I make a selection from there, I want to set a value in my TXT result box. That's the action. But I want to take it a step further and provide a condition before that action is actually executed. So for that, I'm going to move to decisions. Of course, I don't have any in my rule yet. So to start building a decision, you click the plus sign, and what that will actually do is launch the expression builder. Now, we'll be creating another video that goes into much more detail of using the expression builder and the various options you have available here and what you can do with the expression builder to help build your business logic. But for today's demonstration, we're going to be using just the controls section here and then watching what happened as we build the expression here in the middle of our screen in those 3 boxes. So we know that we're building our decision, our condition for our drop-down box. So we'll select controls, we'll select our drop-down box called choices, and then we select the value. So what this is saying is the condition starts with when the value in my drop-down box called CBX choices. Once you have this, the drop-down box or your control selected, and then what you want to check for that control, in this case the value, click the arrow button, and this adds that function to those boxes there in the middle of the screen. There you go. You can see that we just added our first box. Right? So now, if that value is equal to, and let's just enter one of the values from our selection. So what this is now saying is that if the value selected in the CBX choices drop-down box, if that is equal to Windows 10, that's our condition. Right? So now we have the condition. Let's verify it. This checks the syntax only, not the logic, just the syntax. If it were wrong, you would have a red box around here. This is green, indicating that the syntax is correct. So we can click Done. So now if we look at our decision, there it is. CBX choices.value, if that equals Windows 10, what do we want to do? Well, we know that if that condition is met, we want to set a value in TXT result. So I can click the plus button here that says click to add action. Why would I do that versus going up here to actions and clicking the plus sign? The difference is that by clicking the plus sign here, from within this decision, the action will be tied to the decision. In other words, if the decision is met or if the condition is met, this action will be run. If it's not met, it won't. If I go up here and add this action, there's no condition tied to that, meaning it will be executed every single time, which is what we don't want to have happen. So I'll click the plus sign. This launches the same expression builder, and now we're in the action part of what we're building here for our expression. And our action is setting our TXT result control. So we're setting the value of that equal to, and we'll just pick something, we'll say latest version. All right, let's check that syntax. Again, we're good, so we'll click Done. Now if we take a look at the actual decision, you can see our action is indented from the decision, indicating it's tied to that decision. So if that condition is met, if the value that I select is equal to Windows 10, we'll go ahead and set that text box equal to latest version. Let's test it out. We'll click Preview Form. So the first thing that I'll do here is simply select Windows 7, and nothing gets set into our text box. If I then choose Windows 10, we now see latest version. So the business logic that we've just implemented works exactly as we want it to. All right, so that was option one for creating a rule. The next option was using the Rule tab up here. And if you recall, I mentioned this gives you a graphical representation of your rule. So if I select that tab, there is the rule that we just created on the other screen. You can see it has the same name, obviously, set Windows result. Here is our condition, indicated by a purple diamond. And then here is our action, indicated by a blue, what is that, a parallelogram, I guess, if my geometry is still correct. So there is no right or wrong as to which option that you use for creating a rule. It simply comes down to your personal preference. I prefer seeing the hierarchical view here, the graphical representation. So let's assume for a moment that that's how you want to build your rules. How do you do that here? So let's go ahead and delete this rule so we can start fresh. So I'll click the Delete Rule button. That gets rid of our rule. And just to verify, if I switch over to the designer, it's also gone here as well. So let's go back to Rule, and let's start. I want to create that same rule. How do I do that? Well, the first thing you do up here on the very upper left is click the Create Rule button. So I'll do that. As you can see, by default, you get New Rule as the name. But you can immediately change that. Now, if we continue looking down the left-hand side here, there are some other options, but I don't see anything that gives me an option to add a condition or an action. How is that done in the designer? Well, you do that by hovering over your rule, and then you can right-click and add a decision. So we'll add a decision, and then we click the FN button, the function button, and this launches the same expression builder. So we know that we're building the decision, so we'll do the same thing. Controls, if that value of my drop-down box, if that is equal to Windows 10, let's verify, we're done, good. All right, now I need to add an action to this decision. I could go back up here to the rule and choose add action. The problem is that that will be a separate action, not tied to my decision. So I want this tied to my decision or my condition. So I'll right click on my condition and choose add action. And now you can see it's offset into the right. Now we'll build our action here using the same expression builder. So we'll select controls. We're setting the value of txt result equal to latest version. Verify. Good, we're done. All right. Now, the last thing that we need to do here is by building your rules this way, you're basically building standalone rules. You need to still tie them to your control. What is the trigger that makes this rule execute? So over here on the left-hand side again, you'll see this attached triggers section that right now is empty. So we need to tie this rule so that it executes when our drop-down box changes. How is that done? You'll see down here there is a triggers section, and there are right now just two controls, the two controls on our form. We want this to be tied to our choices, our CBX choices drop-down box. So you click the arrow, it adds it to the attached triggers, and now if I switch back over to the designer again, you can see that here is the same rule and the same decision with the same action. So if I go back here and let's preview our form, I'll go through the same steps. Windows 7, I get no results. Windows 10, I now get latest version. So building the rule, either way, whatever is your preference, gives you the same result. I prefer seeing the graphics here. It's up to you, whichever you're more comfortable doing. Now, while we're here on this particular view of this graphical representation, I also mentioned to you that as you get comfortable with the syntax, you can start building these rules by hand if you prefer. How would you do that? So let's get rid of our condition, and because this action is tied to the condition, when I delete this condition, it will delete the action as well. Okay, so everything's gone. Now let's start fresh. So we know that we want to add an action, but first we need to add our decision to check the value. So what you can do right here is if you know the syntax or you're comfortable with the syntax, you can start typing. As I start typing the name of my control, you can see the IntelliSense pops up. So I can choose CBX choices, dot, and now are the various properties of that box. But if I type in a V, you'll see I can get value. So if that is equal to Windows 10. Now I can do the same thing for my action. I can choose add action, start typing. There's my IntelliSense as I start typing the name of the control. Dot value equals latest version. So I've just manually done the same steps that I've done through the builder. Once again, if you're comfortable with the syntax, sometimes this is quicker. The builder gives you the ability to verify the syntax as well, which you won't have here. So if something's not right, you won't see that it's invalid from a syntax perspective. All right, we're still tied to our choices as our trigger, so let's just test this and make sure. Again, I'll choose Windows 7, nothing. I'll choose Windows 10, and there I get latest version. So as you can see, multiple entry points for creating your rules. One way is no better than the other. It really does come down to your preference. And then once you get comfortable with syntax, you can start manually typing these things in. If you're a quick typist and you want to just get through these rules, manually start typing them in, and you can build them as quickly as you need to. I hope that you found this video to be beneficial. We're going to be producing more of these types of videos in the coming weeks and months, so be sure to visit our site often for updates. You can find our videos at www.claysys.com/pages/viewdemo.aspx. If there is a how-to video that you would like to see that is not currently on our site, please let us know using the feedback email below, info@claysys.com, and we will do our best to create this for you. Again, I hope you found this to be of benefit, and thank you for using ClaySys AppForms.